I heard something recently that made me stop for a second. Somebody said Europe, the old colonizers, are starting to look like colonies themselves. And my first reaction wasn't agreement or disagreement. It was curiosity. Because anytime a statement feels that dramatic, it's usually pointing at something real, just not in the way it's being framed. So let's start with the obvious part. Europe built wealth through colonization. That's not controversial, that's history. France, Britain, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, flags planted, resources extracted, systems designed to benefit someone else. And the United States? No global empire on paper, but built on stolen land, forced labor, and the removal of indigenous people. Different method, similar outcome. Power concentrated upward. But here's where the conversation gets a bit more interesting. Power doesn't look the same anymore. It's not ships and muskets. It's trade rules, it's debts, it's military alliance, it's who sets the standards, who controls the money flow, and who gets called unstable when they don't fall in line. Right now, the continent of Africa is a good example of that shift. Not because Africa is suddenly unified and perfect, but because many African countries are making choices that don't automatically align with Washington and Brussels. And that's new. Not anti-Western, just independent. That alone is enough to make people uncomfortable. Now, let's be honest. There's been pressure, diplomatic pressure, economic pressure, messaging pressure. That's not a conspiracy. That's how global politics works. But pressure isn't the same as control. And influence isn't the same as ownership. Saying the West has leverage is fair. Saying it owns everyone else is where the facts start slipping. So this is where people go too far and say Europe has become a colony of the United States. That sounds clever, but it's not accurate. No one is running elections in Paris. No one is writing Germany's budget. European countries still make their own decisions, sometimes bad ones, sometimes brave ones, sometimes inconvenient ones. But here's the part worth sitting with. Dependence changes behavior. When your security, energy, or economy relies heavily on someone else, your range of motion shrinks. You might still be sovereign, but you're negotiating from a tighter space. That's not colonization. It's vulnerability. Think of an alliance like a group of adults sharing an apartment. Everyone pays rent, but not equally. And when one person covers most of the bills, they usually have opinions about the thermostat, the guest, and the noise level. That doesn't mean you're owned, but it does mean you negotiate differently. And yes, organizations like NATO and institutions like the International Monetary Fund shape behavior. Not because they're evil, but because power always does. The mistake is pretending that influence doesn't exist, or pretending it only flows one way. As an American who has lived outside the US for years, this hits a little differently. When you step outside of your own country, you realize how loud it is, how confident it is, how rarely it questions whether its version of order works for everyone else. And you also realize how many people around the world are done being managed. So maybe the question isn't whether colonizers have become colonies. Maybe that's just a dramatic way of describing a deeper shift. A world where power is spreading out, not disappearing. Where countries want participation, not permission. So ask yourself this: is sovereignty about flags or about options? Is independence real if one phone call can freeze your economy? Or when we talk about rule-based order, who actually wrote the rules? Because maybe the future isn't about who's on top anymore. Maybe it's about who gets to choose.